Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be sharing how I use Procreate to draw, and also that means I will be showing some of the tools I use and also my drawing process. So starting off, I like to go to the wrench icon and turn on the reference. This just shows me what the sketch looks like from a farther perspective, and it just helps me basically figure out if the sketch is looking kind of wonky and weird. And sometimes I like to import my own picture if I want to. So if you wanted your own reference picture, you can add it in. Personally, when I do this, I just add pictures from my camera roll. But it is a nice thing to have and to use when I don't feel like using Pinterest, which is honestly not that often. To pull up Pinterest, for those that are curious, I usually slide up on my lower bar and I pull the Pinterest app up and drag it to the middle of the screen, and it will split screen automatically, and that just kind of is one of my go-to ways of drawing usually. The next thing that I like to use is, again, I go to the wrench icon, and under the second menu there's flip horizontal, and that is another thing to help me check the drawing. You should be doing this constantly. It just helps prevent you from getting used to what you're looking at, so whenever you flip it you can spot mistakes and then fix them. Another thing that I like to use is under the magic wand, and that is liquify. Liquify is something that has saved me so many times from having to redraw things. You basically can push and pull things. That's the main function that I use it for, but there are other options. I usually keep the momentum, pressure, and distortion down to a minimum because it just helps me avoid messing up too much. But if I do mess up, I can press the reset button or undo it with my fingers. If I don't want to liquify the entire drawing, to isolate a specific thing, basically I use the selection tool, the S-shaped one, and I circle out whatever I'm trying to move. And then from there I go back to the magic wand and I select liquify again. So you basically have both of the menu things open, and you can liquify and push and pull whatever is in that selected area. And this just helps not disturb the rest of the drawing. This is something that I find very helpful and that I use pretty often in all of my drawings. Another thing that I like to do is, again, use the selection tool to isolate something, and then I will click the select button, and basically I can move things around at will. And that's something that I use all the time without fail in every single sketch or drawing, just to get the proportions right. I like to sometimes scale things up using the uniform, or I will use the distort function. It just helps me move things around, and I can kind of play around the corners to get things to match the perspective that I'm looking for. When it comes to the brush sizing, I like to have fixed sizes for some of my sketch brushes. All you do is tap the gray bar and then click the plus sign, and you have a set brush size. So if there's a certain brush that you like to use at a specific scale, you can have those buttons to tap back and forth in between instead of having to adjust manually. When it comes to layers, I usually have the main sketch layer, and this is basically where I put everything. I do sometimes have layers separate for the eyelashes, sometimes some kind of accessories, or even the pupils of the eyes. This time I had a couple variations of the sketch just to have some options. I like to make a layer for the color, and this is usually where the skin tone will be. As for choosing a color, sometimes I will just choose my own, or I can choose from one of the palettes that I've already created. Another thing that I like to do is choose a photo and create a palette from it. So basically you hit the plus sign at the top. I like to choose create new palette from photos, and basically you can choose whatever picture you want or whatever colors you like from a certain picture, and it will automatically make a palette for you. Next, I'm going ahead and choosing the skin color. So when I fill in the skin color, I like to use the selection tool again, and basically I like to outline the entire area where I'm putting the color. Another thing that I've learned is you can tap along the edges of something and it'll automatically make a line for you, so you don't have to completely freehand and you can get more straight lines this way. This is something that I literally just figured out probably a month ago, and I've been using it ever since. It makes things a lot easier. And then as you outline, basically you just click the gray circle and then you have your selection. From there, make sure that your sketch layer is above your color layer. Then you can grab your color and drop it into the selected area. Next, I like to make a separate layer for the hair. This is going to be the base color for the hair, and I'm going to be using the selection tool again to outline and fill in the color for the hair. For outlining, I'm basically just going around the hair free-handed. There's no real straight lines to be able to make in this, so I have to do everything freehand. Something else that I've learned with the selection tool is if there's gaps and spaces in between something that you want to fill in with color, click color fill in the menu, and then you can select whatever area and then draw around it, connect the line, and press the gray circle again, and it'll fill it in. So this is something that I've been doing a lot. It saves a lot of time, and then you know that your selection is fully colored in. I just like this because it helps me save time. And then for the roots, I like to usually just fill those in manually with the flat brush. And then I'll switch to the sketch brush for the hairline and little stray hairs around the head. That just helps it look a little bit more flowy and everything kind of match together. But this is what the hair is looking like. Now I'm moving back to skin. So above the color layer, I make a shading layer, and this layer I click and I turn it into a clipping mask. This just means that you won't be able to color outside of the layer that is below it. So I can't color outside of the skin base color. This just allows me to be able to color around the face freely without having to worry about everything going out of the lines. At this point, I make another layer for the whites of the eyes, and I'm sure you've guessed it, I use the selection tool again just to add in the white. And I've just been finding the selection tool to be the easiest and most efficient way for me to color things in, so I've been incorporating it in most of my coloring process. Then I go ahead and repeat the same process for the whites of the eyes. I make a new layer above the whites, and then I outline them and fill them in. Here, I thought I was going to keep the purple eyes, but I decided not to later on. But now I'm going to be working on the lips. For the lips, I just like to fill them in with the brush, the flat brush. And I'm just choosing the colors that I like. I went for a two-tone lip. I do that a lot. It's something that I really like to do. And now I'm back on the skin layer, just darkening around the edges of the face. And then basically just starting the rendering and shading all across the face. Again, with the flat brush. If you know, you know, I use that brush to basically color most things. By this time, I realize I haven't made my sketch red, so I turn on alpha lock and I move the layer mode to multiply. Then from there, I go ahead and I like to grab a red color and color over the sketch. And this just makes the sketch red and helps it blend into the skin color. Because the eyebrows were part of the sketch, I decided to color those in the same color as the hair. And so far, I've added in some highlights to the face and I'm shading. For the skin, I'm going for more of a matte look, and I've been gravitating towards that a lot lately. I'm not sure why, I just like how smooth it looks, I guess. And then here I'm blending out the lips, adding in some shading for those as well. And now I've added in the sucker stick on a separate layer as well. I like to add in a lot of separate layers for things just so I don't have to redo things or mess up the drawing. And as you can see, I added in a shirt layer. So sometimes I'll do this early on in the drawing, and other times I won't, just depending on how indecisive I am about the shirt choice. I did start coloring on top of the shirt with a clipping mask. I can always just erase it or I can change it, and clipping masks honestly just make things a lot easier, and if you mess up, it's an easy fix. Something else that I do sometimes, if I feel like the skin is looking a little dull, sometimes I will go to the magic wand and go to hue, saturation, and brightness. And this, you can change the saturation, brightness, and color of whatever layer. And that just helps me brighten up the skin if I need to, darken it, or if I need to make it more saturated. And I do the same thing with the curves option underneath the magic wand as well. The first line is for basically the brightness or the gamma. Then you got red, green, and blue, and you can just kind of play around and make an S curve and even just make an unnatural skin tone if you want to. Then I go to the clipping mask layer that is above the shirt, and I go back up to the magic wand and I click on gradient maps. So gradient maps I'm still kind of understanding, but I like to use them to help me figure out which colors I might want to use for a t-shirt or whatever is going on. And you can make things black and white, you can make your own color presets, your own color gradients, and you can apply those to whatever layer you want to. Here I decided to again add another clipping mask. There are times when I don't do this. I added a clipping mask above the hair so that I can shade on top of the hair. Once I was finished with that, I started shading in the irises and just giving them some more dimension. I don't always shade them like this. I was kind of experimenting with this one, and I think she looks kind of crazy right here. But yeah, what fixes that is making a multiply layer and basically choosing a gray or blue color, a lighter gray or blue color, and I like to draw a line, hold it, and then it will make an arc or it will make a line for you. So that way you can tap the top and then you can kind of move the arc around to fit whichever way you want it to. If you want to figure out some colors that go well with the drawing, you can go to colors and tap underneath where it says harmony at the bottom of the menu. Then you can tap underneath colors and you will have a bunch of different types of color theories, as well as colors that will go well with whatever color you have selected. So that's color theory or color harmony, and it just helps you figure out whatever colors you want to add to your drawing if you do. I decided to just go for a monochromatic look and use all blue colors. But next we are adding in an add layer. So if you go to the layer menu and then you click on the N and scroll down to add, that is what I have my layer setting on, and that is what I use for bright highlights on the face, or I'll use it for bright lighting or like rim lights and stuff like that, which I haven't talked about yet on this channel. And I like using the add layer because it just makes everything glow and it's very strong, so I can use it in very specific parts of the face or on the painting to draw attention to them. And then for the eyes, I'm using a light blue, the same color as the eyes for the highlight. Then I add in a shadow underneath the neck. Then I duplicate the butterfly layer and I basically just make butterfly clips at the top of her head, and I really liked how those turned out. After that, I decided to color in the bottom of her body, so the shoulder area. After that, I added some shading, and then I turned the shirt layer back on. Then I wanted to lower the opacity of the shirt, so I lowered the base color shirt's opacity, and that just makes the shirt look a little bit more like those mesh shirts, and I really like how it looks. This is how she turned out with this pose. I also did a variation of the mouth just because I wanted to see her smiling. I really wanted to share my process on how I use Procreate to draw and give some shortcuts and tips along the way. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.